Oh, please tell me I'm not the only one who feels the pinch of inflation and rising food prices. Please. Hi everyone, my name is Kaye Ramos and welcome to my channel where I share about Christian living, journaling, and homemaking. I don't know about you, but I feel the pinch of inflation and rising food prices lately. That's why in today's video, I would like to share how I cut our food costs without sacrificing the quality. Before I dig deeper, I want to say that some of this may not be applicable to you because each of us has different diet restrictions, food preferences, budget, and goals when it comes to feeding our family. But what I want you to get from this episode or from this video is to get some ideas on how you could incorporate the same principles to your family. With that said, let's go through them one by one. And let's start with the biggest one because I might receive comments like, oh my goodness, that's not saving because that's a huge expense. Okay, you'll understand why, okay? So the first one is investing in something that helps my family achieve two goals. So these two goals are serve healthy meal and save money. So a little bit of background, every Christmas I give myself a gift that I could use in my kitchen. So this past Christmas I gifted myself a grain mill, and it's an appliance that helps you mill your own flour. So it actually requires an upfront investment, but the savings on the flour and health benefits that you get from freshly milled flour is unmatched in my opinion. So now, why did I choose to buy this? Because it's not a savings, it's expensive. So months ago, we've transitioned into eating whole grain bread. So when I went to a farmer's market, I bought bread from a small company and they make their oh my gosh, concentrators. Okay, so they make their whole grain bread from freshly milled flour. So my husband is actually not a very fan of whole grain bread, but when he tasted it, he loves it. The problem is it's quite pricey for a loaf, which runs around $9 to $12.50 depending on the type you buy. But we really like the flavor and how easy it feels on our body. So we tried to buy it, but to be honest with you, it's a huge dent on our budget just for a bread. So I thought, why not bake my own bread and buy the flour from them since they sell freshly milled flour. So it's around $4.50 a pound, and try to do the math. You don't just bake a bread using 1 pound of flour, right? Especially if you are feeding a family. So another reason also is that my toddler is growing and having baked goods on hand are extremely convenient and helpful during busy morning, for breakfast, or when we go outside. So I've saved for a year by not buying unnecessary kitchen gadgets. And then came Christmas. I bought it, which is now helping me save so much money on bread, flour, and baked goods. Not to mention, of course, that we get to eat all the nutritious parts of the grains, like the endosperm, bran, and all those things. Of course, this will not apply to you if you are sensitive to grains, gluten, or you cannot eat bread or that sort. But since grains are a huge part of our diet, I consider having a great meal an important asset in our kitchen. Another thing also is that my father is a rice grower, so I'm so used to having freshly milled rice when I was young. And when my mom would bake goods, she usually buy freshly milled flour. And it's something that I'm already exposed to when I was young. So I'm like very nostalgic every time I meal because the smell gives me the feeling, or it helps me remind of my memories when I was a little girl. And that brings me to the second one, slowly building a bulk pantry. So this is something I am still learning right now. I'm still a beginner when it comes to this, but as I mentioned, we have our grain mill now, so it just makes sense to have grains on hand, right? So for instance, I usually buy spelt flour for baked goods, and my goodness, every time I go to the grocery store, it seems as if prices keep going up, and many times it's not available in store. So if I order it from Amazon just for probably 1 in 37 pounds, it's already $9.99, which is like 45 per ounce. But if I order the grain and mill it myself, I can get a 25-pound bag for around $35, 16 from Azure Standard, which is around 9 cents per ounce. And not only that, I can make my custom flour like Ezekiel flour and then add more protein to our baked goods. So it's something really exciting for me. I just placed and picked up my first order from Azure Standard, and I paid around $220 for lots of grains, including the shipping and some, dairy products and other nuts that I wanted to try. The only thing about building a bulk pantry is it requires a little bit of planning because you have to shell out the money at first, okay? Remember also that you don't need to buy it all at once. So I only bought those that I could use in multiple dishes, and do not buy a big bag if you are not yet sure about the taste or how your body will react to it. Another good thing about having a dried bulk pantry is that they are more shelf stable. And one caveat is you just have to learn how to cook from dried version as opposed to canned version, which I'm totally okay with that because I like experimenting in the kitchen lately. So right now what we have, or what I ordered, are different types of dried beans, different types of grains, legumes. Did I pronounce that right? Legumes, nuts, all those kind of things. We also buy some stuff from Costco like pasta, spaghetti sauce, and other items. Third way I cut costs is taking intentional inventory on what we have. So the biggest reason why we waste food in our household is because we don't see it or we don't remember that we have it. So I redevelop our pantry system to make sure that I know what we really have. So now when I open my cabinet, I know exactly what's in there. So every month, I go through my list to see which items I have, so I know what I can include in the meal plan. So I know exactly which items need to be used because they're about to expire, and which items I need to replenish. Every week, I also go through what's inside my freezer, what's inside my fridge, to see what need to be cooked right away. We only have one regular freezer right now and one mini freezer, so we don't really have lots of food stored there. But I still like to be on top of it because things can hide at the back burner or the back portion of your fridge. So every time I check the three areas, the freezer, fridge, and pantry, I always carry a notebook because I love journaling, so I can list down things that I need to use, and then I come up with meals surrounding those ingredients. Fourth way I cut costs is preparing things from scratch. Okay, so I understand that not everyone has the time and energy to make things from scratch. That's why I make meaningful decisions on what I can make or cook from scratch. Oh my goodness, I don't prepare everything from scratch. So right now, I prepare some of these things from scratch. It's mostly bone broth, like beef bones or chicken bones, bread, which is mostly sourdough, baked goods like muffins, pizza, waffles, pancakes. I also make our own marinades, dressings, nut milks, mostly the final meals, the final dinner. But there are some things that it's best to leave them to experts, like for example, pasta. I once tried making pasta and it's horrible. So I just buy pasta. And also other complicated baked goods for me like puff pastry, things like that. So technically, the only thing that I make from scratch are those that we eat often and they don't have complicated process. So at first, it was a challenge to do these things from scratch, especially I didn't know how to cook before, but I did not learn them all at the same time. And also, I realized that once it becomes part of your weekly or daily process, it's actually a lot easier to do and it becomes part of your habit. Fifth way I cut down costs is to simplify our meal planning process. So I try to cook meals that have almost the same ingredients And sometimes I like to challenge myself by doing 5-ingredient dinner recipes where I create meals out of 5 ingredients. Of course, that doesn't include spices, seasonings, and other kitchen staples like rice, oil. For instance, I make chicken broth, then I have a huge pot of flavorful broth that I could use for soup. Then I have a whole chicken I can shred and incorporate on different soups and meals which are extremely nourishing and delicious. So I have a running list of meals and recipes that we love, and if ever I want to try a new recipe, I always make sure that it has simple ingredients that I can use for other meals, and there are not gazillion steps to perform, so I don't have to wash a lot of dishes. Sixth way I cut costs is having a leftover day. Probably a no-brainer to some, but since I'm the one who cooks at home, of course, one deserves to rest. So I have a 1 day each week where we just eat leftover. So every time I cook and after we eat, the leftover will be portioned for next day's lunch, for my husband's lunch, for my lunch, and anything that's left over will be frozen. Because based from my experience, I know that if I leave it in the fridge, it will not get eaten, it will get wasted. So depending on the type of food, I vacuum seal it to prolong the shelf life and the quality of the food, and then we can choose what we could have during leftover day. So that way, we can just get the right portion for each of us and just reheat it when it's time to eat. Come to think of it, those leftover food equates my husband's time because he worked hard for the money so we could buy those ingredients. And it also equates my time because I prepared and cooked them. And both of those times are portion of our lives invested there. So let's not waste the leftover, please. Let's not waste the food. Let's not waste time. Let's not waste the portion of our lives. So yeah, those are 6 ways on how I cut food costs without sacrificing the quality of our meals. So this one actually allowed me to incorporate more healthy meals in our diet because it challenges my creative juices. So hopefully this inspires you somehow. If it does, I would love it if you subscribe to my channel so we can hang out more often. This is Kaye Ramos. Thank you so much for watching and see you guys again next time. Bye for now.